Welcome to another episode of Searching for McGuffin with your hosts, George,
Gabe,
and Link.
as well as the ghost of Pele, apparently. For those of you watching, Link was touched by an angel or something.
Yeah.
What's going on?
It's Billy Gunn.
And we have a very special guest with us today. A longtime friend of the show and longtime friend of me.
yeah,
Yeah.
15 years?
No, it's gotta be-
What?
15 years, maybe
I'm
more?
39, so I'm pretty sure it's more than...
Well, middle school.
Okay. I had to do the math. 30. I don't know. How old are you in middle school?
What was the
I forget
year?
now.
You're like,
Was it 7th grade?
You're like 12
Or
to,
sixth grade?
12 to
Seven?
14?
14?
11 to 14?
Yeah.
Yeah. 6th grade or 7th grade? You remember?
25 years.
This is the 90s, correct?
I think
though.
I want to say 7th grade. So,
Okay.
like,
26.
who was your teacher when you got there?
Mr. Skillen.
Skillen? Oh, that's 5th grade. So
Yeah,
now you're
yeah.
like 11,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So what's 39 minus 11? I think he's still. I don't think he's with
20
us anymore.
20.
So we can
Not.
say his name. It's
No,
fine.
he's not.
Oh, he's not.
No.
Confirmed.
Confirmed. I think he
Oh.
had 1 year, and we were an awful class, and he moved on.
Oh, I meant
Oh,
with
you-
us like here
you
on
guys-
Earth.
Oh!
You guys killed him?
That's what I understood too. I was like, I was not there that day.
He gave up.
He's confirmed not with us anymore.
I hope he's still around.
I hope so too, but he might not be. If not, we're talking about another Mr. Skillen. All right. If you ever hear this. So what is that? 39 minus 11?
28.
28. Okay.
Wow.
It's a big difference.
28. Yeah.
Wow.
15.
Yeah, we're about to hit double that in just a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a long time. We've been up and down these roads.
Yep.
You're the guy, I think I've shared the story. You're the guy that called me in middle school after Phantom Menace.
Yep.
You had already left. We weren't in school together. And,
Nope.
and we both agreed that it was a disappointment. And I was talking to you right before this, and I told you that was the first time I felt like I wasn't alone in this world. When
Right.
someone else knew
Right.
that Jar Jar. Just ruined the movie.
Dark times.
Yeah.
Dark
Maybe
times.
that's what killed Mr. Skillen.
Phantom Menace. The prequels.
Yeah.
The prequels.
We took him to watch it, and then he
Never again,
had
yeah.
a heart attack and died.
It was a class trip. And that's the day your class, he died.
Yeah. I've gotten feedback that you don't talk directly into the mic either, by the way, Link. So
She's looking at you.
you always got to put up the level. There you
Hey,
go.
I'm going to make out with
Alright.
my mic.
So, whether it be Star Wars, whether it be wrestling, we're backyard wrestlers together.
Yes.
But that's a story for another time.
I'm a
Yeah.
big fan
Oh, are you now?
of his character.
Yeah.
Yes,
Why?
the badass.
The badass.
That's
Oh,
right.
One of my
That's
favorites.
right. That's right.
Classic.
A very interesting take on Stone Cold. Unchained Stone Cold, probably.
Yeah, and you know what? And it was the inspiration for John Moxley's character today.
Yeah.
I think he just. I think he just took. He must have seen those tapes somehow. I don't know where. Hopefully, no one else ever sees those tapes.
At Lewis's house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he was there.
Yeah.
Over the fence. But one long time thing that we've shared, and that I think all of us has shared on some level in our lives, is the comic book collecting activity.
Right.
I said that really weird. That who calls it an activity? I guess a
It's a
hobby.
hobby,
It's a
There
hobby.
You go, there you go.
It's
A hobby.
There goes a hobby.
It's a lifestyle.
And I always say that when it comes to knowledge of comic books, you're the guy I go to. You have like an encyclopedic knowledge of comic books from my perspective. Do you feel like that's like overstating it?
It is just because there is like a finite beginning, or there's something finite to it. So there's a beginning and to an end to the knowledge, right? So anything before 1980, I have some reference for just because of reading back issues and whatnot.
Yeah.
But anything after maybe 2020, then I'm no longer part of active collecting.
Yeah.
It's gonna get lost. So the older I get, the more I will not know.
But I also feel like, and that's funny that you would put that window and make it sound like it's a little bit. You guys were just impressed by that
Yeah.
huge window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, that huge window.
But
It's longer than I've been alive.
Yeah. And then the other part of that is that you're like, the older you get, the less you'll know. But I feel like you keep going backwards.
Yeah.
And you keep pulling from older materials. So you might not be into the current, like you might not have the knowledge base for what's been going on the last couple of years. but I feel like you're moving that line like further and further back or deeper into that period with some of the stuff that maybe you knew tangentially growing up, but now you're like filling out whole collections of stuff that amazes me you can even read. To
Right. So, right, to your example of getting deeper into it, like really my sweet spot is DC Comics between, let's say, after Crisis to Infinite Crisis. And DC has published so many things outside of their mainstream titles. So like right now I'm getting into, Dark Stars, Legion, Legion. Not Legion of Superheroes, actual Legion with like aliens and stuff like that. They're so background characters, and you're like wondering, I remember this guy from a team up here, and now I see an entire like 28 issue run. Let me start collecting that now, right? Versus whatever DC's publishing now.
You mentioned Legion. What in the world does that stand for?
Legion. But they just have a dot in, through. It's like,
so it's like an acronym for
it is an acronym.
Oh, it is.
I just don't know the acronym.
Is it like Friends?
No, and it's a weird title. So they will have like Legion 1993, and then
Friends?
Legion 1994, and Legion 1995. So
Well, they just reboot the book every year?
no, the numbering started, when it started, and it continues. They just, when the year changed, they added the year to the title.
Okay.
It's very weird.
Friends stands for something? Is that what?
I don't know. There's a period
There's
between
just,
every
yeah, there's
letter.
nothing between.
Yeah,
every letter.
it's got to be something.
Yeah.
We got to find out what Legion stands for and what Friends stands for. Comic book collecting. You mentioned getting into you guys have collected comic books, right?
Yes.
On like what level have you guys collected comic books?
I went to a convention. Was it MegaCon?
It was MegaCon, yeah.
MegaCon when I was very young. I went with you guys.
2007, 8.
That was very specific.
When
I
you
don't-
say
I don't
you guys,
remember.
who's you guys?
It was us,
Yeah.
Jonathan, like your brother, and I think
Lewis,
Lewis
Okay.
probably.
Mm-hmm.
my sister.
And then I remember
Oh wow.
That place was awesome. I
Yeah.
got a signature from Darwin Cook that day. That's awesome.
R.I.P. the GOAT.
Yeah,
So also that
Well,
was the
you
one
were
that
there,
was?
we
I
didn't-
think so.
Yeah,
he
I
probably
think so.
was.
Yeah, I was gonna
What,
say
we were
that.
all there?
Yeah, I think everyone on this
I don't
panel
remember
was there.
him.
Because that's what I was alluding to. You said us, and I was like, he was there, right?
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
We got an action figure from that day. I bought
Oh, that Hush figure? That's right.
I
There's
bought
a-
it and gave it to you.
Oh, I feel like getting up and putting it in front of that.
Next time.
Yeah.
I remember going, and so like I remember all of you were very excited. Like I guess MegaCon had a bunch of different aspects of like fandom and stuff, but comics was like the main thing.
Yeah.
So I was kind of excited because I think this is one of my first conventions going with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
Traveling, all of us traveling caravan style up to Orlando, and I just remember it was kind of I was trying to like figure out what, because comics is so vast. I remember I just would read random issues that you would have at the house, and I remember you guys would go to the comic book shops by FIU, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Henry
Hurricane, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And so I was, looking around, and I don't know why I ended up settling on Green Lantern
Yeah.
with Hal Jordan. I'm not really sure of the author, but
That's
I remember
the J.F. Johns run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Great
bought a
run.
bunch of issues.
Yeah.
And I took them home.
That's a good place to start.
And I was reading them when I got home, and then I think one day, like, my room was a mess, and one day I think my mom was just cleaning out a bunch of stuff, and unfortunately the stack of comics that I had
I remember
got
that
lost in the shuffle.
Mm.
After that, I
Stories.
never really collected again.
Should have sued her.
I think it was too painful. I think.
It's not too late.
It's not too late.
But I think
Trauma.
that was it for like me and like physical copies. Aside from like
Yeah.
books, like whole like graphic novels that you would own.
Right.
After that, it was pretty much just digital.
I remember that year was a big year for trade paperbacks and hardcovers because that's the year that I got like the Frank Miller Visionaries, and those were like out of print, but they had them there. Some guy had them, and he either didn't know what he had, and I got them real cheap, and I started just collecting like on my bookshelf to have them. Was that the year that you drew a phallic symbol on my brother's face?
Yes.
So now you remember.
Now I remember. On the way,
Bro, was it?
You were
Are
there.
you talking about me?
Yeah.
Was it?
I love that you were like you were the only one who had no recollection.
Was
of
it? It was Ponderosa next to the Ripley's
Yes.
Believe It or Upside Down house.
Yeah.
Dude, you drew that on his face with a Sharpie.
Is this gonna be
Now
on the
I
podcast?
remember you there.
Yeah.
No, you gotta edit this out. That's awful. I'm sorry, Jonathan.
He doesn't listen.
It was the funniest thing because it was like It was on his face, and he did not
He did
realize
not.
it.
Oh, now I
And we
remember.
go
and we go
inside.
inside the restaurant. Yes.
And the people like serving him just looking at
Oh
us.
yes, that's.
And then the cashier was just like staring at him.
And she got mad. She got mad at us.
She's like, "Who did that to
She
you?"
thought it was us too, because it'd be something like
Oh.
Little kids
would do.
Yeah.
It was a college student that did.
Bro, I remember he was so pissed.
Yes, he was mad.
He was
Yes, he
so
was.
pissed.
I love that his payback was when he went to the bathroom, he put salt on your orange juice.
On who's on mine?
No, on
Oh.
Socrates. And I thought, oh,
That
okay,
is- that is-
okay,
It balanced,
even now.
it balanced the scales.
Check
That's right. That's
me.
right. That's right. That's right. A salty mouth while I was talking to Darwin Cook.
Yeah. Darwin. Oh, your dream was ruined.
Oh man, that was
Big takeaway from that convention.
Yeah.
Takeaway.
I believe we drove to the wrong convention center too at first.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're like, we were wrong. There's no convention.
Was it the one with the Iron Sheik?
No, that was a SuperCon.
Yeah, it was Florida SuperCon
Yeah.
down here.
Were you also there in that one?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, you missed out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just that's the whole story. The Iron Sheik was
Iron
there
Sheik
with us.
insulting someone,
Yeah,
comparing him to Hulk Hogan.
yeah, using racial epithets that can't be uttered
Can't be said, yeah.
in public or.
Yeah,
on
we'll
the
get
show.
into cons a little bit if you want right now. Since
Yeah,
like, we're on the
since we
topic.
transition, yeah, right
I
away.
typically don't do cons just because of the entrance fee. Like I'm like, man, I want that money to go to the comics or go to something. Like I hate paying $40 to get somewhere just to then buy stuff. You know what I mean? I have plenty of access to comic shops and whatnot,
Mhm.
and that's really the main hurdle to the cons. But my sons, both of them, like to go there more in terms of experiencing the fandom of
Yeah.
it all, really, and the showmanship of people in costumes, getting signatures and stuff like that. That to me is not the draw, but to please them, we have started going to cons up in Chattanooga. And actually, we did a couple cons in Florida, really small ones, and that's typically the best ones, I
The
think.
small ones?
I agree.
Small
I agree.
ones,
I don't
small
think we
ones.
really get small ones down here
No.
Not
anymore.
anymore. Not anymore. It's
Yeah,
super
and
popular.
because that's my favorite memory as a kid with Town and Country Mall.
Yeah. Oh, that was awesome.
Used to just it was kind of like a swap meet
Yeah.
basically, and it was just like baseball cards, collectibles, comic books on long boxes. And to me, that's what a convention was. It was like a place to find stuff that I can't get in my local store
Right.
normally. And I think it might be an age thing because I'm gonna give you guys an opportunity to kind of like you've been to conventions recently and what that is. But for us, I think it's just to get access to physical
Yeah.
product from our age. They didn't have any of that costume stuff.
Nope.
There weren't celebrities
Right.
there. And that's just, like you said, not the draw for me. So those big ticket items and having to travel for them. And nowadays you can kind of, with the internet, you can order anything from everywhere. So
Yeah.
it becomes less and less about finding the comic books you want and more about experience, that social nature. And I just didn't grow up that way, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah, the big difference between the first time I went to Comic Con, I believe in 2008, and last year was that when we went, I felt like the main people were the comic book artists and writers, right?
Right.
That were there.
Yeah.
They had some voice actors,
Mhm.
right? Some B level celebrities like Lou Ferrigno.
How dare you?
Man, that's A+ right there.
Yeah,
man.
man.
That guy
That's
is
top
great.
tier, man.
Now him and I
Really?
started beefing that day.
Yeah. You've gone back and
You went
forth
to
on Twitter.
Comic-Con?
No, that was a MegaCon.
Oh,
But when I went last year, what I noticed more is that the comic book section got a lot smaller. It
Yeah.
wasn't the main focus, and now it's all celebrities.
Mhm.
And which is cool because some of these celebrities, like these voice actors, got very popular.
Yeah.
I remember I saw what's the guy that died? Batman.
Kevin Conroy.
Kevin Conroy was there. Like that's the last time I saw him, and his line was like packed, which I thought he deserved it, right?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Hey, like-
absolutely.
Yeah, but then you had other celebrities there, like you had the kids from Cobra Kai. You had the Hobbits there, which was cool.
Random Power Ranger series.
Yeah, the Hobbits were there, which we ended up taking picture with Frodo.
Well, you ended up taking a picture next to a glass panel.
glass-
that
yeah,
Frodo was on the other
other
side
side,
of.
yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh, because of COVID?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So as someone who really enjoys comic book, I was disappointed about the change.
Yeah.
Because like, man, like I like the other folks. Like, I'd rather connect with these guys because these other people you can actually talk to them.
Yes.
I mean, which was even better because everyone was focused on the celebrities that you can spend more time with the comic book people.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. But yeah, that's the main focus now, and also cosplaying. And I remember one of the things that we ended up doing was speed dating.
Yeah, that was funny in your episode. You did mention that.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny.
Which was hilarious
Yeah.
right there. But yeah, the more it's not the focus is no longer on comic books, and that kind of bothered me.
Oh, okay, interesting. What about you, Gabe? I know you went to New York Con, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, New York Comic Con.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was an actually interesting experience, I think. Because I'd never really been to a con outside of Florida before. And like New York Comic Con is like, it's a big deal. It's pretty big.
It's a big apple. No oranges.
Yeah. And so I think going there, I realized, like you were saying, comics was like, at the forefront. I feel like, and like that's how I grew up. That's how I grew up going to conventions. That was the big thing. As I got older, I started attending more Star Wars themed conventions, like Star Wars Celebration. And I realized with New York City Comic Con how big anime had gotten.
Yeah, that's true.
Anime and wrestling, like Dragon Ball Z had a giant I think it was superhero that they were promoting, and there was like a giant Shenron and just like life size Gokus and Vegetas that people could take pictures with. There was a bunch of Demon Slayer stuff, but I also think wrestling was another big thing. AEW was there,
Yeah.
and that's when I was getting into, like, you guys had got me into AEW, so I was able to see a lot of the wrestlers there. But what it was weird because I didn't see as much comic stuff, or maybe I wasn't in the right areas. But as Link was saying, I think the big draw is the celebrities that go.
Media.
But I think it is a little, the prices are getting a little out of hand.
It's ridiculous.
With either just a meet and greet or
The meet and greets are
like the whole glass panel thing that took me out. Like I was like, there's like, why would I do that?
I didn't get to touch.
Because also you guys like paid good money to like take a picture with him.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that saw your photo are like, you photoshopped this. It was like, no, this is real. We're right there. It's like, this is a really bad Photoshop job. That's a real glass panel.
Yeah. No, and it's like, it's like a lot of those premium like celebrities are like $200.
Yeah.
And so I remember one time I went to
$200.
$200 for
Wow.
a picture. So I remember the one we did it for, it was a group of 4 of us.
Mm-hmm.
It was $50 each. We decided to split it. It was at Celebration. I think it was in Orlando.
Yeah.
And here's the picture.
Yeah, that's right. But it's part of our set.
Yeah.
And
It's you guys.
Wait. So this guy's, up there with people who would be worth that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was
Ellen DeGeneres is.
it was a no-brainer.
That
for
is
me.
Mark Hamill.
It looks like.
How dare you?
It was a no-brainer for me, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah,
with
that
the,
one's worth it.
with the glass,
I can understand.
I can understand,
For,
yeah.
it's like, for example, for me, he's just a person. I love
Right,
everything he's done,
right,
but
right.
I wouldn't pay for it.
I would have.
But also, you're talking about 200. What, split between 4 guys?
Yeah,
Yeah.
$50.
$50 is not bad.
And it's like, like that, like he's like the representation of like my favorite character in anything. Like,
Sure.
so getting to meet Luke Skywalker, and the difference is like with that glasses, like I was actually able like it goes by pretty quick, but you're actually able to shake his hand and actually give him a hug.
Yeah, you can
And-
say you met the guy. on
Yeah,
some
and it's
level,
and it's just like,
for the privilege.
I mean,
of
that's like, I mean,
$200.
it could be dumb, but it's like for some people, like you can get like emotional. Like it's just like it's a big figure in your life.
Mm-hmm.
That this is a person you never really met, but it's like you got to meet him.
I had the gates of Mordor between me and Frodo.
I remember we went to a barbecue party before WrestleMania
Oh,
that
yeah.
the Hardy Boys were
Were there,
hosting.
yeah.
And we went with a friend that happened to live in town in Orlando, and he was like a lapsed fan, hadn't watched for years, but he loved the Hardy Boys in the 90s.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm going to come. And then they had the photo op, and I think it was like 100.
$80
Oh, it was $80
For both, yeah.
for both?
Which
Okay,
was pretty
not that
good,
bad. That's
yeah.
pretty good.
I mean, now because we
Yeah.
got the prices now.
Yeah, I mean, I say pretty good. I would never spend that money because he was like, "You guys gonna do it too?" And I was like, "Nah, I'm good."
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna go get the barbecue.
Well, those guys also, I mean, Matt and Jeff Hardy, right?
Yeah.
They stay in shape and they look kind of like the Hardy Boys back from the 90s.
Jeff does, yes.
Jeff does. So Matt's let himself go a little
I
bit.
didn't say that, but
Okay.
yes, Jeff does.
So you get at least one half of the Hardy Boys that looks like they're actually wrestling because he is, right?
Yeah,
or he
they're both
was at
still
that
wrestling.
time.
No,
Okay.
I don't know
In a way,
about
you
Jeff.
got two
Matt
halves
doesn't.
of it.
Oh, that's true. But
So-
Matt doesn't have knees.
That's a little different than, a Lou Ferrigno who's 60 something, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing. You were mad at Lou Ferrigno. The reason this beef goes is because you were a kid and he wanted what?
$20 to
Yeah.
sign my Walmart copy of the Hulk.
Right. And that was you as a kid. Now find someone that's going to do anything for you for 20 bucks.
You're right.
So it's like you've allowed that thing that traumatized you as a child is the norm. It's the culture.
Yeah.
And you're talking about $40 to get into Comic-Con. And then you want to meet someone and pay another 40 bucks,
yeah.
another 60 bucks. Like,
Well, that's a little different. So you're a kid, what, 10 years old?
Yeah, I was like 11,
Okay.
and I the thing too, I didn't know the proper etiquette for a convention, right?
Sure.
I thought, oh, can you sign this for me? I got it at the Walmart bin.
Right.
You should be grateful
Right.
that I bought
oh,
this
that's,
because I found it there.
that took a
right?
turn.
So there's definitely a point where the business stops, right? And you're just appeasing a young fan and you go out of your way to
Yeah.
Right.
encourage this young fan, say hello, pay respects to that part of,
Yeah.
the fandom.
Because
So-
you're like, how old, literally?
But here,
How-
I think I was in 12th, 7th,
Yeah, so
7th
you-
grade.
so you're-
and that's the thing too, like, because that day we were going to the comic book artists and they were signing our comic books.
Mhm.
And the writers as well.
Right.
Right.
And I
Just
thought that
buy,
was-
buy something or
Yeah,
have it already.
Right, just
you know?
have it and they sign it. And I
Yeah.
thought that was awesome. So I thought that would also translate to Lou Ferrigno.
Right. But you're like a 12-year-old
It
kid.
did not.
You're like a 12-year-old kid with a 1970s like film DVD. Like, give this kid a break, man. You should be happy that someone who's like living now like
Knows who
the
you
one-
are.
Yeah, it's not like a 40-year-old
Yeah.
dude. Who's
This
like,
was before I
You're
Love You Man came out. So no one knew who he was.
I mean, I knew who he was.
I didn't. My generation did.
You knew he was the Hulk. That's all you knew.
Yeah.
You knew his-
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because his stand says that he's the
Oh,
Hulk,
yeah.
and you're looking at that DVD,
Yeah.
and you're like, same guy. But when I was growing up, Comic-Con was like Mecca.
That's
Like
the one we
one
want. That's
day,
the one
I want to go.
to.
But I grew up to the point where it's like they don't even talk about comic books. It's
No.
all
Anymore,
about
it's all
Yeah.
dropping trailers
Right.
for movies, stuff that doesn't even have to do with comics. Like
That
a
was
Cocaine Bear.
That was
trailer
another thing.
and
Anything,
panel.
anything has a panel. Anything.
Everything has a panel. Like I listen, I like fantasy, and Game of Thrones is fine. But like, you're not comics. Why are you at Comic-Con? But everyone's at Comic-Con.
No,
now.
it's just pop culture con.
Yeah, it's
now.
pop culture con. Yeah, and it's like for me, it was like I don't really have to go there anymore. By the time I had enough money to fly
go,
to San
right.
Diego, right,
Right.
and actually drop money, I don't.
And
I don't
even
need to go.
and
No
honestly, even like with like the Star Wars conventions that I was still going to, I got to a point where I was like, I was going into some of the panels. Like some of the panels are actually really cool, but it's like, was this worth a flight to Chicago?
Yeah.
For
And I went to Orlando just because it was here, and Celebration burnt me out, and I was so thankful because I can't imagine how upset I would have been flying to another state.
yeah, the cool thing was like I got to explore Chicago, I got to see a new city. I didn't
Yeah,
do that
of course,
before.
yeah.
Chicago's great, by the way.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Oh, I love
beautiful.
And they have
Chicago.
great
Yeah.
food.
Yeah. The Dark
you
Knight
spent-
was filmed there.
But you spent 3 days in a convention hall.
No,
No,
like I actually ended up getting stuck in Chicago, so I was actually able to stay another day, and my friend had an extra ticket.
but you did go to like 3 days of Celebration.
Yes, I was only supposed to be there for 2
Uh-huh.
because I was supposed to come back because Game of Thrones was his last season premiering, and there was no knowledge of what was going to happen at that
Mhm.
point with Game of Thrones. But yeah, like a lot of like the excitement for panels, like trailer drops and stuff like that. When they were just releasing this stuff,
Like the same day.
like on YouTube at
Yeah.
that exact moment,
Yeah.
and like at that point, I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I don't think I'm ever going to go to one of these again."
Yeah. You get excited about a commercial, realize it's just a commercial. You're getting excited
It's
about
2 minutes.
propaganda.
It's
It's,
too-
not.
it's
Yeah, yeah,
it's
you're
not
paying
original.
to be marketed to.
Yeah, it is. It's getting excited about marketing, and that marketing is half real, half just the explosions to get you geared up, and really the movie 9 times out of 10 is not really
Won't live up
close
to
to the
it.
trailer.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that trailer was Rise of Skywalker, and
So that did
in
not
retrospect,
live
I
up.
think I'm even more mad.
Every day that passes. Going back to the core collecting.
Yeah.
So you guys don't really collect nowadays? Do you collect anything?
No, I don't collect. I use whatever the library's app is, and that's how I read my comic books.
That's
Hoopla.
awesome.
Hoopla.
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, I'm all digital now,
Yeah.
so I use Hoopla and whatever you have on Comixology.
Yeah, because at some point I switched to digital and I was buying stuff like
Yeah.
crazy there. I haven't even read half of it.
Yeah.
But they have those digital sales, and it's like it doesn't cost them anything. But me, I'm like 99 cents. I could buy this whole run I wanted to read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you buy enough whole runs, and you're like, oh, when am I gonna read it?
And it's
Right.
easy because all I have to do, hey, you heard this comic book is good, and I put that idea in George's mind.
Yeah, pretty much.
A few months later, he buys it.
That's just because he works me.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, I heard it's really good. Hey, you gotta check it out. You gotta check it out. And then at some point, I wake up in the middle of the night, and in a dream state, I just buy comic books for Link to read. Yeah. So you use the library. You haven't been really reading. I buy digital at times. I'm not really in a place where I'm like reading a lot. Every time someone like suggests something, I'll go to Hoopla and stuff. You're still at the comic book shop,
Yep.
buying books. Some new ones you said, I believe.
I do.
But mostly back
Mostly
bin
back
stuff.
issues.
Okay, what is that like, and why have you maintained this hobby?
I'll tell you. So off the bat, there was a point of my childhood where I did not have TV. Right, my dad sold the TV. It was a devastating day for my brother and I.
That sounds traumatic.
And it lasted a long time. So the only thing I really had for entertainment was, going down to the store and buying comic books. So at that point, Superman was in between dying and being reborn, or whatever it was. Yeah, whatever he was. And the four Superman and Spider-Man had his own thing. The Avengers had their own thing. And that became kind of my Nickelodeon, my Disney, my Fox, and all that sort of stuff. And it was great because, when we were kids, right, there was only the Saturday cartoons.
Yeah.
And then that was it. And you'd have to wait until Saturday. And I think Cartoon Network launched at some point.
Yeah, at some point there.
Okay,
yeah.
but still, there was no ability to see reruns, but comics were always available. I would always be able to grab a comic, read it, put it on the shelf, read another one. Oh, this one referenced this other thing. Do I have it? Let me grab it, read that one. Okay, I'm up to date. It was really nice to go back and forth between the collection, and it filled the time, right? Because I had no TV.
It's funny that you mentioned being able to just grab a comic. Did you ever get to experience comic books at the grocery store?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually I did. So I think it's still in Albertsons. It's right next to the Target there on Bird Road.
Uh-huh.
They had a spinner rack.
Really?
That's right. I remember that. My mom going there once and me being like dumbfounded. And of all the things on that rack, I chose a Wizard magazine. And Wizard magazine was like a comic book focused magazine. It had articles about creators and whatnot. Had a price guide.
The price
Had
guide's
other
in the
things.
back, right?
That's right.
It tells you every issue and how much it's worth. And you would like check, I have this one. Oh, $3.25. It's gone up.
From last year, from last month,
You
it
would
was
highlight
$2.
them all.
Yeah, that's right.
At least I would. And I'd be like, yeah, we're growing.
And that's pretty cool. That
It was like
pretty
stock
cool.
trading for
Yeah.
children.
So we didn't have the internet, so you had the Wizard and you had that physical copy,
Mm-hmm.
and we were too young to really know what Overstreet was, which is the general price guide for
Mm-hmm.
the industry. But back to the physical copies, I still collect physical copies, mostly back issues now. The only thing I stay current on is Nightwing because I love Dick Grayson. Even though DC's making it hard to be a Dick Grayson fan, I'm still sticking to it. And there's another comic that is done by an independent company called Ahoy. It's called Dragonfly Man. And basically the premise is Frank Miller Batman meets Adam West Batman.
Mhm.
And they go on adventures, and you have that dichotomy, which is awesome. I love Adam West Batman. The older I get, the more he becomes my favorite Batman.
I agree. The older you get, the more you appreciate it. Like when I was young, I was too cool for Adam West Batman. I was like, this isn't Batman. What is this? But now I'm like Brave and the Bold, the cartoon, or Adam West. Like,
Those are awesome.
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Goofy
Excellent.
Batman. There's a space for him.
Goofy Batman. So apart from working for a public utility, I also have a podcast on the side that I do with my family.
Mm-hmm.
And our latest episode is a special on a character called the Email. And his the way he talks is based almost exclusively on Adam West and the way he addresses Burt Ward or whatever adventure he's on. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah. Let's do a little side quest. Let's talk a little bit about your show and how comic books and all this stuff that you grew up reading, watching,
Right.
has shaped that show for you.
So as a kid, right, you're collecting comic books, and then with no TV, there's still a lot of free time, so you start creating characters, right? And I've invented over 100 characters, and silly things like Chicken Man or whatever it is. So I have that creative like itch that I'm always trying to scratch. And you started a podcast, and I was like, well, if George can do it, then
anybody can do it. This fool,
especially to when you're married to someone like my wife, who is very IT savvy and able to navigate stuff. Like really, I mentioned I work for a public utility, and that work is pretty demanding. So I'm in front of some sort of screen 8-9 hours a day, or it's in the in my truck and the screen is there, or I have calls on the phone. And when I get off, the reason why I've stuck to the physical media of comics is because I'm not in front of a screen. I don't want to be in front of a screen on my off time. So I'd rather just open up a floppy and then go through the 22 pages or whatever it is, and then put that back in the stack and whatnot. So I'm not burning out my eyes further with a screen.
What is a floppy?
Floppy is a derogatory term for a comic book.
Okay, it's not a floppy.
Oh,
I thought it was a floppy disk.
I also thought it was a floppy disk.
Floppies. So you have now in the era of trade paperbacks, right? Or graphic novels. That's the term for a comic book, a floppy, because it's
it's
just
derogatory.
Yeah, it is. It is
almost like a flaccid.
It kind of is, right? So the floppy, really, you're getting a bit of the story nowadays, right? So it's usually 6 issues makes the one arc of the graphic novel or the trade.
They still doing that because it feels like it goes like 12 or 18. So
if they changed it, then they're still doing it though. So the one floppy is somewhat flaccid, unless I guess you get the first one and the last one of the story, and that's where you get your punches and whatnot and setup. But everything in between definitely falls on the flaccid side. You're like, I need this other one, and then I need 3 more, and then
So then you haven't gone digital with your comic books.
I have not. The intent was, there was a point where I've moved a couple times. So right now I live in Chattanooga, and before I moved, I purged. So I moved from, let's say, Little Havana to South Miami, and I purged half my collection there.
Really? What'd you do with it?
I essentially gave it away, which was awful because I've actually rebought all that stuff. It was all like 90s X-Men and 90s Image stuff, and I just love that stuff so much because it takes me right back to being 11, 12, 13. And that's kind of what I want to collect. That's when I really like the characters. So I've ended up rebuying all that stuff, which is pretty awesome, right? How many times do you want to buy Wildcats #1?
I think you're single-handedly half the copies of Wildcats #1 on the resale market.
And it's pretty great. So when you are buying stuff as a kid, you get like maybe issues 1, then maybe 4, then 7, right?
Absolutely.
Especially
piece together those stories in your mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's incredible to actually find an issue of that missing puzzle.
Yeah.
And be like, oh, that makes so much sense because 3 issues later, this guy did this, and that was the setup. Oh man, this is so cool. So it having those mysteries get solved just by collecting back issues is one of the reasons why I continue to collect comics.
Yeah. That's one thing digital's done for me, filling in those gaps. You said rebuying, but it was like I gave away my collection and ended up digitally buying so much of those things.
Buying it back,
Right.
Yeah. And then those gaps, because I sometimes like my brother or someone who has access to my collection will be like, why do you just randomly have like 3, 7, 12, 15? And I was like, when I was a kid, those were the issues I didn't have. So I didn't know what happened in 3, 7, 12, 15. So now
I bought an issue of Exo Manowar. Exo Manowar number 14, just because I remember seeing that cover as a kid and reading that comic book. I have no idea what happened before or after, but I remember him, diving into the pool, having his adventure, all that sort of stuff in that comic book. And it just took me back to being a kid and being like, what is up with this art? Because they tried some really funky thing in Valiant where it looks like muted colors in those early issues. And that's always stuck out to me as being strange, just because, okay, Valiant does it like this, Marvel does it like that, DC does it like this, and you see the different types of production in these back issues, or in these comics, really.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned wanting that break from the digital, and that's why you've stayed physical. Yeah. I realized just by you having that conversation that I was really big going all digital. Then the pandemic came. I was teaching through a computer screen all day. I stopped watching as much TV as I was before, and I stopped reading books digitally because it was, again, I needed a break from that, and I kind of broke the habit. And I think that's kind of why I fell off from reading digitally. And I'm really big on Like, yeah, let's get that physical book here. Like, let me buy a physical book and see it. I'm more trade paperbacks and hardcovers, put it on a shelf after I'm done, because I had given away all my single issues. I'm not about to get back into that.
Yeah.
But and I think it's just like you run out of space for it.
Yeah.
And like you share a habitation space, and it's hard to have a place for like 16 long boxes of comic books.
Where are those?
I give them to my brother. My brother is the guardian of my collection, and he has them stored, hopefully not in a damp, dark place.
Yeah.
But when I gave it away, I knew it was no longer mine, so I don't lose any sleep over it. But then I have the space to build the studio, in my home.
Yeah.
I can't do both those things. I can't have 16 long boxes. How large is your collection?
I have somewhere around 7,000 to 7,500 issues, and they're stored in very creative places. So I have a couple closets. I have a couple closets because, like you said, we share spaces with wives and family. My boys have an entire playroom, and I build them shelves so they can display all their Legos and action figures. And I can't even get a shelf in the playroom. So apart from comic books, I started collecting action figures because the boys really like them, and it's something that I share with the littlest one.
Yeah.
My eldest son likes comics, so he has his pull list at the shop. So that's why we still go to the shop, and that's how I still keep Nightwing and whatnot. And what he collects is like miniseries. So he'll have like a Marvel Avengers Tech 1 through 5, and then that will switch over to Marvel Monster Tech 1 through 5. And I see a lot of miniseries, and that's what he gravitates to, not your traditional ongoing story of Spider-Man, issue 300 and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you were my dad.
It's nice. So it's you guys, no kids, right?
No.
Right? And no kids?
No kids.
Okay.
No
So
kids.
once you have kids and you want to be a good father, the goal, of course, is to do as much with the boys, right? Or girls and whatever, as much with the children. So whenever you get the opportunity to kind of find some commonality with a hobby that you truly love, it kind of works for the kid and the parent.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of commonality early on fishing. Unfortunately, the fishing hasn't stuck to it. The boys just like catching fish, and the days that you don't catch fish, well, they don't like it so much, and it kind of sucks. But the comics, you just go into a shop and all you have comics there, and then I want to get this back issue, and especially Hector, we've been able to kind of set him up to we'll buy like runs off of eBay, so he'll get the full set, and then he maintains it. He has his own little short box and stuff like that, and he'll have his full set. And then, he's like kind of a completist, but like I said, he only focuses on miniseries. So he hasn't gotten into Detective Comics where he now has to collect 900 issues or whatever, which is good.
Yeah. I do that with my niece. I come up with excuses to buy things so that she can play when she's here.
Yeah.
So it's like, you can't see it on the set here on camera, but you see like all the Nintendo figures, that Bowser ship, Peach's Castle. I'm like, I'm going to buy it so you have something to play with when you're here. Like, what an excuse. Like, come on, man. Like, I'm obviously making an excuse to buy these things for me because I was like, what am I going to do with it? But like you said, find that commonality. If I have to play with her, then, okay, you're going to get some Jedi stuff. You're going to get some, she has a full Rey costume, lightsaber, Princess Leia is a hero. Like, you try to impart that to the next generation.
Yeah. She's into Pokemon cards now. Yeah. And I don't even think she's super into it. But that's all I buy her now. Like, she's a girl, so it's Pokemon cards is a guy thing, right?
Typically, yeah.
Yeah, typically. So I want her to have better cards than the boys. So I'm like living through her. I don't think she cares, but
well, and then that's the other thing too, is like you got a heads up on the kids because like they depend on their parents. Their parents probably don't even know anything about it, but you're an expert, so you're like, I'm gonna go get that exclusive deck. I'm gonna get that limited edition. Talking about action figure collection.
Wait, but really quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Where do you put your comic books? You said you have creative ways.
Yeah, I have a closet. I have a closet, which I'm trying to customize the closets because, like I mentioned, I'm buying action figures, and I'm basically just buying action figures. I wanted it as a kid, never had the opportunity to get it, and still in the card. So the idea is to have an X-Men Toy Biz set of figures displayed next to a Toy Biz Marvel Legends one, just because those figures are so different of when I was a kid. when I was a kid and watching, the cartoons and then reading the comic books to when I was like in college. Like the figures just became so much more
Yeah.
interesting and articulate and detailed and whatnot.
You see some of the toys that they have now, and it's like, man, if only.
Right.
Like,
right. So we had figures that would just kind of like, you would have a set like punch type thing and then would go up and down, and your legs would also move, right? And then maybe you came with one accessory, like some really large gun that didn't quite fit properly in the hand. And then you played whatever adventure with that stuff, and that was great. But it'd be nice. I would like to see, Toy Biz, X-Men team, Marvel Legends X-Men team, same characters, kind of like Jim Lee era figures. And actually, I have a full like giant size X-Men Toy Biz run, Toy Biz set, and then a Marvel Legends set. And that's what inspired them trying to get it on the Jim Lee era too. Because I still think of all the comic books I've read, Giant Size X-Men #1 is right up there with just great story, introducing new characters, great art. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
On Giant Size X-Men #1, that's it's not John Byrne. Who came before John Byrne?
John Byrne's father.
In my head, I'm thinking Kurt Swan, but that's a Superman guy.
It wasn't John Byrne's father. Came before John Byrne, and then his father before him.
Oh, it's such.
This is why you're the
you're
guy.
the
Don't put that on me.
It didn't come out after 2020.
I gotta look this up. This guy, I was reading.
It's gonna kill you, right? If you don't.
While you check that out,
Yeah.
You mentioned action figures, and Link and Gabe constantly on the show talk about how it's therapy for us, and I've been holding on to something. I wouldn't say resentment, but definitely a memory for a lot of years, and I'm gonna share here for some catharsis, to just finally put it behind us. I bought you a Maximum Carnage Spider-Man set for your birthday, right? It had Scarlet Spider, it had Kane, it had who else? Spider-Man with the big black spider and the like wristband webbing, the suit that he had.
Yeah, I
at
remember.
That time, right? So it was like an 8-player set. But I had one figure that you didn't have, which was Spider-Man
2099. Oh,
yes.
yeah, I remember that.
You remember this?
I still love that figure.
Yeah, you still have it?
No, I don't.
Oh, but you love it.
I love it.
Okay,
yeah.
I love it too because it's like the one that got away.
Yeah, he had a cloth cape.
Yes,
Yeah, cloth cape. Yeah.
So you didn't have this one.
And I think he came with like for whatever reason. So Spider-Man, right, a character that has web spinners or web shooters and whatnot. He came with like a giant axe. You remember that? He came with a giant axe that was on fire.
Oh, it was for Fortnite. They were setting up.
Gotcha.
Gotcha. Beforehand.
Yeah, great figure.
Yeah. So, do you remember how you obtained that figure?
No.
Okay. So we collected DC Impact cards. I believe they were called.
Great set.
Yeah, they were like 3-dimensional cards.
Yeah.
I said that we're 3-dimensional. 3-dimensional cards because like you could touch.
They had like an imprint.
Yeah,
right.
Superman was coming out of it, right?
Right.
And you could feel, the card.
Not the
right?
closet.
No, not yet. Anyways. But all the characters.
He's sunded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy for him. So all the characters are coming out of the card, right? And we had a bunch of them. We bought a bunch. And you had a stack like this of doubles that you had. And I mean, they were worth a lot. I mean, they were worth more than the figure that I had, like retail value, right? So you said, I will give you all of these doubles that I have for your Spider-Man 29. And I was like, this guy's a sucker. So my Spider-Man 29 is like $12. I don't know what they were. $12 tops, right, at the time. And these cards are like $5 a pack. And he's just going to give me like 30 of them, right? So we traded. And you took my Spider-Man 2099. And then I was so happy for like a few days. I put them in the card holder.
Yeah.
Like they filled the collection. They were all cards I needed. But then after the days passed, I realized,
Play with that.
no, he didn't lose anything. No. They were doubles.
They were doubles.
They were doubles. They had no inherent value to him anymore. I gave up something I loved for his leftovers.
Yeah. And to you at home, just listening, look up Spider-Man 2099. This is probably one of the best Spider-Man redesigns out there. That costume is just awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Did you like the Spider-Verse movie?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
So you're like, I don't know, excited, but like anticipating the next Spider-Verse movie?
I no longer have any type of like expectation, right? From these movies. It's more for the kids. The boys really liked it.
But this one has 2099 in it.
Yeah. So
that's like a big benchmark, I think, to cross over to the mainstream. Like,
right, and so Sony is I don't know how they're promoting the movie, right? But you have just recently the Blue Beetle drop, the trailer, right?
Yeah,
and that kind of shows
I haven't
Jaime
seen it.
Reyes, a Hispanic male.
yeah.
Spider-Man 2099 is Hispanic male as well. They
Yeah.
should be promoting it just as well.
Isn't it?
Oscar.
Miguel O'Hara.
O'Hara, yeah.
O'Hara,
Yeah.
that's right.
Because
Did
he has
you-
like
did
an
you see the
Irish
trailer?
father, but
You're right.
like
But it's Oscar Isaac.
I believe
that does the voice,
Mexican
right?
descendancy.
Yeah.
Oscar
Did you see
Isaac
it?
is playing.
The trailer.
That for which one? I haven't seen any of
The
the
new
shows.
trailer dropped today.
No,
Yeah,
I like I said, I've been trying to avoid trailers. I know sometimes what usually happens is when a monthly episode comes that I catch up on trailers because we're gonna talk about it on that episode.
The way that they opened it was actually very interesting. You want to know what it is?
No, I mean sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
They opened it with Toby's Spider-Man emblem, and like just they basically do every Spider-Man. They do Toby, they do Andrew, and they do Tom with each of their Spider-Man emblems, and then a line from their movies.
Really interesting.
And
I have
then-
heard rumors that they will be in it.
And then the trailer, but live action, like not animated, just
Okay.
like live, like from clips from the film.
Okay.
And then they jump into the what the film is going to be about, and because I hadn't really like known much about
Yeah.
like what Oscar Isaac was doing, like who Miguel O'Hara was, and I'm still not even sure like if that's his role in the comics, but I guess the premise is that he kind of like brought all these like different like a super Spider-Man team together,
Yeah.
and I know that he's kind of at odds with Miles about a certain like something about choosing like for like someone's life versus for like the majority, I guess.
Can I be honest with you? You just blew my mind because halfway through that, I thought we were still talking about the Blue Beetle trailer. And I was like, they got Tom Holland and Tobey Maguire? This movie's going to be
Crossover.
sick, bro.
Where's Miguel from?
The best part of those Spider-Man movies is the out of
I think he's
the
Mexican.
down on his luck Peter Parker
Yeah.
favorite.
Oh,
character.
yes,
I
yes,
love
Nick
that
Miller's
guy.
Peter Parker.
Yeah, that guy. I love that guy. He's one of my favorite
He's one of
actors.
my-
He's one. So whenever my wife was watching TV and he's on it, I will stop. So she had like a new girl
Yes.
phase.
Yeah.
Every scene that caught with that guy was fantastic.
You would only pop in for his scenes.
No, I would pop in, and like if he wasn't there, then I would definitely
Yeah,
pop
exactly.
out. And if he was in, then I'd stick around for a little bit. Actually, I love Nick Miller. He was great in Jurassic Park.
He's my favorite part.
Yeah,
What?
In
He
Jurassic-
is in Jurassic
he's in Jurassic Park.
He's just,
World-
he's
World
just
Jurassic.
Right.
He's just
Oh.
IT guy. He doesn't do
Yeah.
much.
Right.
That's it. He
But I
was
like
in
seeing
The
him.
Mummy with Tom Cruise.
Oh, serious?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I never saw that.
Yeah, he's like dead the whole movie. Like he plays a dead dude. Spoilers? I don't know. Everyone's dead in that movie.
Yeah.
So, I think you mentioned jumping in like series to series, constant reboots.
Yeah.
Oh, must be annoying.
It is annoying. It is annoying. It makes the kind of the collecting hard. I think it's easier when you have
Discouraging.
a discouraging, right? Because you don't know, this character that had X, Y, and Z qualities suddenly changes. Like I mentioned, Dick Grayson being hard to follow nowadays.
He went through a phase where he was like a secret agent.
I
What was that
unfortunately
recently,
it
right?
was very hard to follow that when you're like, this is so not in character for Dick Grayson.
Why not just
or
write a different
Nightwing.
book?
Create a new character.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
a lot of what I think DC and maybe Marvel face now, right? You have characters that will slowly start entering the public domain, and you kind of lose control of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
So you're creating newer characters or kind of repositioning new characters to show some sort of freshness. And the gamble is it pays off, but more times than not, it doesn't with the existing fan base. And I did stick through that Grayson run, and I did not like it, but I wanted to follow Dick Grayson. There was light at the end of the tunnel with the next reboot. Kind of got it right a little bit, and then had a huge misfire by, just taking the character in another direction out of nowhere, where now he became Rick Grayson because.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
That-
You can't say
was-
Dick, man.
You can't say Dick, and
Does he
you
wear-
can't
does he
put it
wear a
in print.
mustache? Does he have a
No.
mustache?
He shaved
I'm
his
Rick
head.
Grayson.
Shaved his
Oh, he did
head.
shave. That's close enough.
Yeah, he had amnesia from a bullet shot wound.
Of course he had amnesia.
Started calling himself Rick
Is there
Grayson.
a formula that they use to write these books?
The main part was to change the name, right? So how does a company
Wait, really?
change? I'm pretty sure.
I was joking.
They wanted to get away from those type of jokes. instead of embracing it, right? You know,
Can you just
Richard
say Richard?
historically is a
bro.
strong name, and the nickname for Richard has been Dick, at least for that character in specific. You know, you can go back to what 1930 something, 1940s, and you know Richard Grayson.
Plus,
Dick
you gotta
Grayson.
own it, man. Grayson is bigger than that name as an insult or anything like that.
Right.
Like,
So that character has earned the ability to be called Dick Grayson without so much jokes, right? Just from being around and having whatever type of stories published of that character. You know, you get a new character nowadays and you'll pop him out there and it would be a joke. But, you know, Dick Grayson has stuck around since some of DC's earlier days, and kind of have to stick with those major parts of the character to continue telling stories. If not, kill him off and do a new Nightwing under somebody else. But you cannot take an existing character and kind of shove him into a new direction, because that then completely alienates the fan base. It completely, like even a new fan base, you would see this character and be like, what is this number one of Richard or of Rick Grayson? And just be like, this doesn't make any type of sense, because you have the characters around that change all kind of wondering the same thing in those stories. So you're changing the character, but then Batgirl is asking Rick Grayson, hey, don't you remember being Dick Grayson? Or Robin and Batman doing this, and Alfred especially, hey, you know, don't you remember this? We got to, you know, so it's just
you
such
had a different haircut,
strange,
man. You were so different.
such a strange story. And that for sure, I stopped collecting between like 20 issues until they kind of just hard reset it. Okay, he's back and we're moving forward with the story, and not really going to acknowledge that.
And he's Big D now.
Yeah. Yeah.
D. Grayson.
Why can't they call him Richard?
And they do that to all the characters, right? They, you know, Superman has had that done. Spider-Man has had that done. Tony Stark has had that done. Captain America has had that done. There's a point where the story is somewhat stale to the publisher, maybe even to the readership, right? You look at one of the biggest relaunches or revamps is Heroes Reborn in our lifetime.
Yes, Heroes
Right?
Reborn.
So,
Which I say like with joy for reasons,
Yeah.
because it's not like, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how you feel about it.
I
Not
love
like-
it.
You love it.
I love it.
He always says this. He's always like, I love it. Like,
Love
and
it.
I was like, I grew up and I was like, no, it wasn't good. I loved it when it happened, but
Yeah,
like, it's not
love
good,
it.
right?
Even if you read the previous arcs, right, and you're going with that story, and you know those characters, the Avengers, the Iron Man, Thor, they're all selling very low print runs because those stories are awful.
Yeah.
They don't stay true to the characters.
right.
You relaunch them under the Image guys, and they give them a shot of life.
The
and,
art is sick.
and
the character designs, like those Fantastic Four suits are some of my favorite Fantastic Four suits.
right, and you have that guy. So he kind of redid the X-Men, so he has experience with reinvigorating these characters, bringing them to modern taste and whatnot, and they become somewhat successful. But there was an end game, right? So you have your relaunch, and then the characters are fresh in the eyes of the readers again, and then you bring them back to whatever 616 universe, and it kind of
Status
fit.
quo.
Right?
Back to status quo. You guys have jumped in on these like reboots, relaunches. What's your experience been with those?
I just jumped in on the New 52 when it happened, and I enjoyed it. But then a few years later, like they stopped it, like
You're right.
and I was like, okay, well that's it. I mean, I was excited with my issue ones of all the stuff I had. I'm like, oh, this will pay off. This will pay my.
This will pay for college.
This will pay for college or my son's college. But they keep on rebooting. And it's like, oh wait, so this is worth nothing anymore. So yeah, it's like I stopped.
Hang on to those issues, right? So
you
comics
do you
become
want them?
they can become valuable after
Probably
30,
has
40
them.
years.
Do you want
I have the ones that I collected, and
So
I'm
you
have
want
to
mine? I'm trying
I have to
get rid of
stick
mine.
to no, I have to stick to those strict guidelines of staying within the parameters of what I want to collect, because if not,
you have to.
it grows.
Only the rules
Yeah.
create order in our lives, or we fall apart.
Once you cross that line.
Yeah.
So the comic books, they become more valuable, right? Unless there's some sort of appearance in a film or appearance in a show, and then all of a sudden, this is the part of the business I do not like. That one comic book that costs $3 and should always cost $3 jumps up, because now everybody wants that copy of, let's say, OMAC #1 from the New 52, because OMAC appears in, let's say, Blue Beetle.
He's in Blue Beetle, right?
Right. And now you have a scramble. Oh, let me get my OMAC #1. Nobody has cared about this comic for 20 years or so, maybe,
Yeah.
whatever.
And it's so fake because no one still cares about OMAG.
Right.
Like it is artificial. It's, oh my goodness, it is the stock market
Yes.
in comic books.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can't we keep anything pure?
Right.
Well,
That
you-
stuff is actually crazy. I have a classmate that's in the program with me. He's really into like collecting comics, and like that's just some like more than just just watching the movies and stuff like that. He just loves comics.
Right.
And like he collects, but then he also sells when like time comes in. He was explaining this to me, I think when they announced that I was gonna say Hugh Jackman is returning as Wolverine. That I think a specific issue or several issues, like their prices just like instantly jumped up to the point where like he had certain issues that were like, it was like at that point maybe like a couple hundred. Once they announced that, I think he said that like they were worth like anywhere from like $35 to like $7,000,
Right.
and a hike up in price. And there's how like once something gets announced, something drops, there's like an appearance somewhere that those prices get jacked up. And it's interesting like hearing it from him, because it's like the comic guys usually like are you guys to me, and it was someone that like I met from like somewhere else. It's like I haven't really met a lot of people that are into comics like that. So it's interesting like listening, because you guys aren't in the business of like selling those comics.
Right.
And,
No.
like, but this guy like actively like keeps up with that stuff, and I know like on some of them he's made like actually like really good money on that stuff. But it's interesting like that other world like of like financial gain like from these books, like as a hobby, like you collect because you like they're fun and like you enjoy them. But it's like thinking about it, like if I were to collect DVDs and movies, and how like if they were worth like a bunch, like how I'm trying to think of in comic terms, because I don't own a lot of comics, but I have owned a lot of DVDs, and like selling that out, I'm like, that's kind of crazy to me how you're just like you give that away. And I mean, the money's good enough, I guess, in some instances, but I mean there's got to be stuff that like you want to keep, like you will never sell.
Yeah, because that's the thing. As a collector, for me, it's never about the money. It's never about how much it's worth. It's about what I feel about, which sounds like such a stupid thing for like junk, basically, right? But how I value the item. Like I got like a CM Punk Funko Pop, a Daniel Bryan Funko Pop when he was in WWE, and they've shot up in prices when they retired, when they came back, when they switched companies. And it was like, yeah, I can get like $200 for it. I paid $8, when I bought it. But it was like, but then I won't have it.
Yeah,
and if I won't have it, why'd I buy it in the first place? Plus,
Be,
what am I gonna do with $200?
It'll be like your Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah, I'm gonna have $200 in 2 weeks. Yeah, it'll just be like Spider-Man. Exactly. And and that's the lesson I learned that day. It's like once you let something go,
That's it.
it's gone.
gone.
And you never know if it's coming back.
No.
And it was like with sports collectors, this happened a lot. Like I used to work at a sports school, and there were a lot of sports collectors, and it was a constant like, this is my trophy room, this is my like souvenirs, and I sold it, and I made this much, and now I'm gonna buy some other thing, and that kind of like buying and selling. I was like, that's not what a hobby is for me, and that's awesome. Like if you do that, because I think when I was younger and I was in college, I used to buy and sell a bunch of stuff like to get ahead, but I don't want my collection to be more work. I want it to be an escape, And for me, like getting rid of something, then why'd I really have it, to begin with?
No.
That makes it hard to let go, which is like another problem. But
Yeah, I was, because on the other side of that, because it's not something like that I was, doing as a hobby, but over the pandemic, I just started, buying. A lot of it was like electronics, like either Xboxes or like monitors or just random stuff. Because I was in Chattanooga, and people in Chattanooga just like will let go of things for practically nothing.
Yes.
Like there was a couple times where like I bought a TV for like $60, and there was like a little bit of like backlight washing where it was like a little like once the screen is completely black, it was like a little faded. There really was no issue with the TV. It came with a Roku. They gave this to me. It was like a 55-inch TV for like $60. I sold that thing for like $300. And I'm just like, there's just certain things where it's like, that's not like a hobby for me. That's not a collection that I'm building upon. Because that to me like gets to me, because it's like if it's something that I love, something that I cherish dearly, it's like I don't know how I could like give that away from my, like if it's someone that if I'm giving it to someone that I care about, out of like love, or like I'm giving this to you like out of reverence, like take care of and stuff like that, then sure. But it's like attaching a monetary value to something that's so sentimental to you, I think is it's kind of hard for me to get around.
Yeah, I think those guys who do that are more, the hobby is flipping stuff and making money.
Yeah.
And that's really where they get the kick out of it versus I got a full run of Wolverine. So I have, issue 88 where Wolverine and Deadpool fight. And that specific issue, just because now it has that movie tie in, it's going up in value. And I want that 88 in between 87 and 89, right? I don't want that to break in my
Just the
collection.
missing piece.
Yeah.
Collection.
That's when he
Going really quick, going
go
back to Giant Size X-Men #1, the artist was Dave Cockrum.
Oh yeah.
And-
Was it Jim Lee?
No,
No. So for our listeners,
X-Men #1 is Jim Lee. Giant Size X-Men #1 is Dave Cockrum.
Yeah.
And
That's-
both comics actually are fantastic.
That's a comic with like the green background, or what's the color of that?
The background is basically the old X-Men, and it's kind of like a paper, and the new X-Men are kind of breaking through.
Oh, that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we were both thinking about like just the regular X. For all the listeners that were on bated breath for 30 minutes, they weren't listening to any of that.
They were
waiting for
for-
Sock's response
Yeah.
on that. Gabe said that he like looks at us as the comic book guys, and Link kind of balked.
Like me?
Yeah, but to be honest, you're the one who keeps me up to date on newer stuff. You're like what's his name, Zdarsky run?
Yeah, Chip Zdarsky.
of
Oh, yeah,
Daredevil.
Daredevil, yeah.
You're the one who has me buying those books so that you can read them.
You buy them?
No, I did like the first two.
I was like,
and then you're
I'm
like,
reading them on the
you're-
library.
yeah, you're
app.
like, you take too long. I read them on the library. And then like, I remember there was a trailer for The Last Night by Scott Snyder. The one where Batman, is that the name of the title? Where Batman has like the Joker head?
Yeah.
Right? There was like an animated trailer. And you were like, you should check this out. Scott Snyder has a new Batman book. And I was going to buy it too. But then you told me about the library app. I was like, you know what? It drops the same day. Let's just read it for free.
Oh, I don't think it drops the same day.
That one did.
Oh,
that one
okay.
dropped the same day. So, and I read it like that first day. And I was like,
Interesting.
thank goodness that I did not buy this book. You read this book, right?
Yes, I did.
And your
Yes,
thoughts?
I did. It's an interesting Elseworld story.
Really?
Yeah, it's an
Tell
interesting.
me you liked it.
I liked parts of it.
Okay.
I did not like the final issue.
Final twist?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
did not
that's
like
the
that.
ruined it for me.
But everything else, kind of the setup, as long as it stays within that Elseworld
Yeah.
thing. I like all Elseworlds.
You like the Joker head?
The floating Joker head in a jar. I did not like that, but Scott Snyder takes the Joker character out of whatever kind of reality is in this
Mhm.
Batman universe,
Yeah.
right? And just makes him into like this ultimate unkillable character. So it fits in the Snyderverse, but not in what I think is canon for
Scott
Batman.
Snyder.
which is-
yeah, not the Zack Snyder.
That's
No,
exactly-
right.
We
No.
don't like that version.
No, we don't like that version either. And I think, I'm glad the DC universe, movie wise, hasn't gotten a lot of traction because a lot of those comics are still, affordable to me.
Yeah.
Versus the Marvel stuff that just has gone completely skyrocketed up because, those movies are beloved and you're growing your audience base somewhat. Not, the people that watch those movies
I don't think so,
don't
man.
come to the comic store
Yeah.
to pick up issues, but they would pick up keys, right? They'll say, oh, that's the first Green Goblin. I remember seeing William Dafoe as the Green Goblin. I want that issue. And that's kind of like the focus or the fad of the month for this person. And, they 3 or 4 of those people will jump up the price.
Yeah.
No.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say that was kind of like, I guess, my experience, because I grew up kind of reading comics, but movies were always my thing. Movies and like either television shows. I remember, I think it was like around when No Way Home was coming out that I started, like, I was just like I was just wanted to read the comics basically. And like I would ask you guys like about like which Daredevil to read, which Spider-Man run to read, and then I'm just like,
Daredevil, all of them.
yeah, you were
Daredevil does
telling
not
me
miss.
you were telling me specific ones. Yeah, and there's like this thing, you were listing a bunch of Daredevil ones, and I'm seeing how many issues there, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And then for Spider-Man, like, it got a little overwhelming because I was like, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go, and it was all digital, like it was all there.
Yeah.
But I was like, does this connect to this? Does this like,
I typed out a list in chronological
It
order.
stumped
for
me.
you.
I gave up on Spider-Man. I think I just ended up reading Daredevil.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Daredevil, from what I've noticed, every time they switch writers, they start all over.
Yeah.
And
But
which makes it easier
Yeah.
to read. Like if you're binge reading, right?
but it's more rewarding if you've read everything.
oh yeah, for sure. No, yeah, for sure.
Because I was like, I can send you to
But
Bendis,
it's hard-
But
it's
will you
hard-
really appreciate it if you haven't read Miller?
No,
Because
you're-
it's just retreading. Like,
But it's hard to figure out when to start.
yeah,
And-
absolutely.
Yeah,
Just collect them all.
Well, because that's what it was. It was like, all right, this is where you need to start. You
Yeah.
need to read, first of all, read Stan Lee's first initial thingy just to get established at the beginning, but then skip to Frank Miller. And then I gave you everything Frank Miller ever did. And then you can go to bed.
Whoa, wait a second. You lose a lot of like, so in the maybe 80s and 90s or maybe to 120, he goes to San Francisco. He has team ups with the Black Widow. It is great 70s comic books.
Yeah, who writes that stuff?
I don't know.
Okay. I know Denny O'Neil
I
stuff's
think
really
Conway
good.
maybe does a couple
Yes,
of those issues.
he's
Mark,
good.
Mark
Let's be
Waid
honest
did
with you.
some of that.
But here's the thing. I'm trying to like limit this to like 7,000 issues.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. It's just like the history of and then there's gaps too. There's your knowledge gap because you're like what you're saying. I've read some of that stuff, but not extensively. So it's like I can't be like these 12 issues, these 15 issues. So I can just give you like the high points. And you got to read stuff like Yellow and Man Without Fear.
Right.
And because that's especially if you're coming in from these
I
like
dropped
television.
the knife.
Yeah, we heard they probably didn't hear, but now that you've brought attention to it, and now that you've dragged it across,
Pele again.
Oh, I got a cramp. I got a cramp. I got a
Which
cramp.
one? That one or that one?
This one.
things were going so swimmingly.
Oh, I'm glad you're in PT.
70s Marvel, by the way, is just fantastic. So you have the kind of the 60s is the setup, and then you have kind of Stan moving out of the way. And Stan's great. I love Stan Lee.
Yeah, I do.
I love all his creations, all his stories. They're just of the era and fantastic. And they're what a comic book should be, right?
I agree with you, and I think a lot of new readers won't appreciate it though.
Yeah.
So I usually don't point people
No,
towards it.
no.
But when I go back and read that stuff, it's like this is what I was missing out
That's
on.
right.
Yeah.
And it's just, man, super bombastic. The stakes are so high. It's so dramatic. The art is pushed. You can compare Marvel 60s to DC 60s, and you'll see it night and day. It's very dynamic, and that's what a comic book should be. And in the 70s, man, they really refined that, made it a little bit more mature, not too much, but it's just really great comic books. Marvel 70s, great era.
I'll ask you guys a question. This goes to everybody. Have comic books become too commercial?
Or too mainstream?
Yeah, too
Yeah,
mainstream.
too
people.
mainstream.
With people consuming them or with the people that are making them?
I think just as conceptually.
Conceptually, for sure. So, there used to be a time when, I would see a person in a Flash shirt. That person was a Flash fan, like Red, Wally West, Barry Allen, and whatnot. Nowadays, I can walk up to somebody with a Flash shirt and, I just got it at Target. I just got it at Target. Ezra Miller's the Flash, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
Grant Gustin on the CW. I watch it after Vampire Diaries.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. That's the Flash fan, for the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
No longer the Wednesday warrior that lives in a basement and is a major geek and whatnot.
That
and
knows that you can't show up on Tuesday.
That's right.
Because they will be closed.
That's right. Or not have the new comics.
Right, exactly.
Actually, I think they switched that now. The new comics Tuesday is on Tuesday.
Is it?
I think so.
That's how long I've been into
for
it,
DC
so.
because they switched their shipping.
That's right. They're no longer with Diamond
That's
Comics
right.
distributors.
That's right.
Which used to have like a monopoly on distributing
That's right.
comic books. Yeah, I don't. They all have separate distributors? Is that...
Yes. So I think Penguin does one, and then Luna does another. I think Luna's DC and Penguin is Marvel.
Hey, very interesting.
Yeah,
That
it
was,
is very
I don't know, that was a big shakeup, a big cultural shift.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Do you think comics are too mainstream, or that wasn't the question. That
They
makes
are.
it sound like such a like a hipster.
They
like,
are.
Oh, now everybody.
No, they are. I liked my little world of comic books.
Mhm.
I liked, I know Cyclops' real name is Scott Summers. I liked, all that sort of stuff. And nowadays it's just out there for everyone. Everyone knows Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Captain America.
They even know Grant is his middle name.
Sure. But they and the problem is, you haven't done the work, right? You haven't collected for 10, 20 years. You just watched a 2-hour movie, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter, but you just saw the movie and it kind of sticks in your head, right?
Yeah.
This person is this person's that. And, the Tony Stark character really does click because so many people like it. He's personable, he's charismatic, he's witty, whatever. But really, Tony Stark was never like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
This is just
You
now.
just love Robert Downey Jr.
And that's another thing, right? That I don't like is when the movie is so influential, now it's changing the character. So now in the comic books, Tony Stark has become Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Chris Evans did such a good job of kind of portraying the Captain America character. It's more or less the same.
Yeah.
But you have a big change too in Thor. He was never a funny character at all, and now they're bringing in more and more of that humor. Which if you like it, great. But traditionally, Thor is not the whimsical guy.
Yeah, and we've tried the multiple imprint stuff, the like Ultimate Universe.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You always end up collapsing it. The reboots always get renumbered. The whatever big shakeup, whether it's death or rebranding or changing, like passing the mantle on to another character, it always goes back to status quo.
Yeah, it does. It goes back to those Stan Lee, Jack Kirby creations, right? At least for Marvel.
Tried and true.
Tried and true. And then you get, in DC, it's a little bit more different, right? You had the push recently to have Jonathan Kent, which is Superman's son in the current continuity, kind of assume the role of Superman. And then kind of take Superman off planet, give him some other adventures and whatnot. Jonathan Kent could not hold the Superman title because the character is brand new. Most of the collectors are maybe my age, right? So they don't identify as a Jonathan Kent fan. And then, there's no fan base to support that. So they come back with Clark Kent, bring him back, reinsert him into the DC universe again, have him reassume that role and whatnot, just what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And this has happened multiple times, not just for Superman, but other characters as well.
Yeah, you end up with like 3 Wildcats, 4 Flashes, 60 Green Lanterns.
But speaking of Green Lantern, a fantastic comic to get into with #1, because there you have Hal Jordan kind of coming back from being the Spectre at that point.
The Spectre,
right? He had gone through such a wild journey at one point, right? He turned evil, killed
Parallax.
all of the Green Lantern Corps.
Yeah, I believe so.
So this is like a revamp where they're deciding to really take a character that has somewhat grown stale. And if you read the issue, so the change happens around 40 of I think volume 2 of this character's
See,
run.
the fact that you can do that's what impresses me. Like issue 40 of volume 2.
Well, you remember that because issue 50 introduces Kal Rayner. I love Kal Rayner.
Of course.
I love that whole mask he has.
I do love too.
Yeah.
And see, that's the thing, the nostalgia glasses where I'm like, do I like him just because that's the toy I had? Those are the cards I collected. Those were the books. I don't remember anything except his girlfriend's head was in a refrigerator, right? But like he was an artist. Yeah. He was sensitive. He was different. I know Kal Rayner, so I love him.
Yeah, that was one thing when I went back and started reading that run. I was like, he's very different from the other
very different, very different. So and it makes sense, right? So there, the character is revamped, and the new Green Lantern is an artist, right? Somebody who can actually use this ring that constructs objects to maximize those objects.
Which is brilliant.
It's super brilliant. Because before, Hal Jordan would do like a punching glove, do like a wrench, do like a tweezer to like pull somebody out of the water. It was very basic, and I don't know if it's the writer was asking for something, and the artist was like, I'm just going to do a punching glove. There's a lot to these stories, right? That you have to go back and you'll say, okay, this is a guy who is writing the story in his office by himself, then sending it to another guy who again is in his studio by himself most of the time. He might have 2 or 3 other artists or maybe somebody helping. But for the most part, these stories are a collaboration created in isolation. Then they're sent to an editor who kind of reviews the mix of the words and the art, tries to get the best dynamic interpretation, and maybe do a couple changes so it fits like an overall editorial mandate. And then there you get things like, Green Lantern Hal Jordan is not a fan favorite anymore. His stories are stale. He's been around since the 60s. Let's get rid of him. Let's first make him evil. And then we'll bring in a new Green Lantern, because then everybody will hate Hal Jordan before we bring in the new guy. So
heel turn, right?
Exactly. So, and you see this in wrestling too.
In comics,
It is pro wrestling in comic books.
Yeah,
it is, and you see it all the time in pro wrestling, right? How many times has Triple H turned heel and babyface? They go back and forth, and you see the same thing in superheroes. But then
lately, he's heel after WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And then you'll see like, okay, Kal Rayner has his run. Then again, now he's turning stale, right? And let's go bring back Hal. Okay, well, Hal he had died as the bad guy.
We went through all that trouble turning him bad and then killing him and then turning him into
a ghost. That confused me at first, because I was like, they're talking about like what happened to Hal and how he like became paralyzed and all that, and I'm just like, when am I supposed to like? They're gonna explain that? And then I had to like look it up. I had to
Yeah.
like actually like deep dive, and I was like, oh, I have to read this issues first from like way back in
It's
the
like
day.
to be a comic book fan, you need to get like an associate's, bachelor's,
It is.
master's.
And
It
threw me
is way
And
back.
then I was like, I have to go read these now.
It is way back. So when you're reading Green Lantern #1, done by Jeff Johns and Carlos Pacheco, a great artist. He just
the
recently
artist-
passed
the
away.
artist is fantastic.
That super clean lines, great storytelling visually. But that's like, mid 2000s. Let's just pick 2007. I don't really, the numbers don't work with me. I'm better with names and and images. But that story that they're referencing, right, of Green Lantern turning bad, is almost a decade and a half
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah.
It's like the only one that knows what you're talking about is us.
Right.
Right? Anyone younger than us has no idea. And even then, I grew up like, I'll say reading, but I don't even know if I really read it or if I just saw the covers and like read like an encyclopedia about it. The Crisis stuff. I know Supergirl dies. I know Green Arrow gets killed. I know, later than Parallax dies, all this other stuff. But then these characters are being reintroduced, like Green Arrow's back because reasons. Kara lands on the planet again. Same Kara? No, different Kara. Why? I don't know. Because these books don't even have the time to explain their own. And it's like, did Crisis happen? Yes. Did this happen? Also, yes. Do they contradict each other? Yes. Why? Multiverse. Move on. You know?
Move on.
Yeah.
Move on. So you're setting up a story, and then it's kind of like we were talking about Miami earlier, before we started recording. You build this exit, and you think it's going to improve something, but it doesn't. And then you're like, okay, well, let's build another exit or another turn lane or something else. So you're going in one direction, and with these creators, and all of a sudden you hit some sort of obstacle. Oh, we have to kind of course correct and whatnot. And I'm glad I don't have that job. I'm on the fan side, right?
Yeah,
Where
absolutely.
We get to collect and pick and choose what issues and what runs we follow. And I don't have to worry about, writing the comic books, keeping those characters in whatever order the publisher wants to keep them in. I don't have to worry about drawing or designing these costumes or characters. I don't have to worry about editing or publishing. I like being on the fan side.
Yeah, because that can be kind of daunting. It's like people that create that stuff. It's like you never really know how your work is going to be received.
Yeah.
And it's like if you take like a very like iconic character and then people just start crapping on what you do, it's like that's scary.
Yeah, it was like those are the two fears. Like growing up, I was like, I would love to do this, and then you grow up and you understand how it works. Like you just went through the method. It goes to the artist and the editor,
Right.
and then like the story group, and they all decide. And then is it marketable? Is it blah 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 blah? And I'm like, I don't want to be part of that process.
No.
Because then by the end, is it even your product? And then even if you come on the other side, if I didn't screw it up and it was great, and then other people don't agree, I think I would be devastated. I would be like, I'm never doing this ever again. And it's like, it's so much pressure. I honestly, my heart goes out to creators who put themselves in this position because it's unfathomable, especially in this social circle that we have where you get immediate feedback from anyone, especially people who don't like it. If people are upset and they're mad, you're going to hear that right quick.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I still like have like I talk all the crap I want about the Snyderverse, but it's like I still like I respect him. Like the guy, like he truly like. I know that I feel like he does enjoy like these stories and stuff like that, and he makes them like how he knows. I don't like necessarily agree with his takes or like how his directorial style, but like I still like this guy is still like making movies.
Yeah, he's
and, like,
doing it.
He's doing it work, and
He makes choices. I don't agree with them.
yeah.
Whatever.
Well, we don't agree with them in terms of the DC universe, right? In terms of Superman and Batman and all that sort of stuff, which are characters historically for kids. Well, those movies are not at all something I take my kids to.
Yeah.
But when he does those same choices in Dawn of the Dead, right?
Yeah.
Or Army of the Dead,
Yeah.
fantastic.
So it's not that.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because these characters are venerated, and it's like, oh, you go do something, and I'll decide if it's good or bad. But you do something to something I already have a very specific vision in my head, and you deviate from that. It's like, but you could do it the best you can, but I'm not gonna like it.
Going back to that with certain characters, I mean, in the movies that you see, I know they pull from certain comic runs. When you see characters like that, I guess on the big screen, and maybe they're just different interpretations of like the characters that you're used to, like from the comics. Does that bother you, or you kind of just chalk it up to like like they're doing their own thing?
Now, so before, right? So when you're 20, you are younger and you kind of have like a tunnel vision for a lot of things. Hey, this is not right, and you get mad and whatever. But the older you get, you realize, oh, this is this really is just a business. And these people have demographics, and I'm not in that demographic, right? They're targeting other people. So it kind of happened when I first got into collecting. You see the demographic shift, and the guys who hated Crisis, they still, stayed and collected Silver Age comic books. That's what they liked. They didn't like the new Superman and everything else that came after. So part of the business, and they're trying to either go the other way from Marvel, right, to have a different brand, because copying is also, it's good and it's bad. You don't want to be the copycat, even though comic books in general, it's super copycat, right?
There's nothing new under the sun.
Bucky comes back, and then Jason Todd comes back, and this person dies, this other person dies, and this person gets a new costume, this other person gets a new costume. It's constantly, especially when you collect both companies, Marvel and DC, you'll see the trends, and you'll see, especially in the 90s, which where I focus my collecting at, you'll see when the Image people start, and then the trends affect both Marvel and both DC. And that's how you get the Fantastic Four, the Avengers really start declining, right? Because they're trying to do what Image is doing. Yeah. But that's not Marvel comics, right? It is the same thing with DC. One of my favorite storylines, and it's mine because I was a kid, is Bloodlines, right? But that's it, basically because Image was doing things like Youngblood, Wildcats, and whatnot. They just had to put blood in the title of some of their books. You can't get more copycat than that,
Yeah, and I think it's also like they have marketing groups that look at all these demographics, and it's, even if they're not copying each other, they're getting the same data, like they're getting the same info, and it's like, these are what the kids are into. This is what's working. And even movies are like that. Like, you'll get 2 magic movies the same year. Right. You'll get 2 biopics about the same person. And it was like,
well, that's how you get the influx of superhero movies, right? Because they're so popular, they make so much money. Let's just flood the market, and you'll have DC pump out their 4 or 5 movies before you would get maybe Batman, right? And then when did Returns come out?
It goes 89, 92.
Okay, so you have a gap there of 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that, 3 years. And then in that gap, you didn't have any Superman movie. You didn't have any Captain America movie that was, worth watching. I mean, you may have had a silly one that was made by Marvel, right? But they're trying to copycat Batman.
Right. And it's like Superman. Like, you'll have 2 great movies, you'll have 2 bad ones. That's it. This franchise is shelved, and we're not gonna touch it for like a decade.
You're not gonna touch
Batman's the same thing. 2 good movies, 2 bad movies. All right, we can't sell Batman. We're not gonna shelve it. We're gonna shelve it for about a decade.
Still like Batman Forever. Jim Carrey's awesome in it. Tommy Lee Jones is awesome as Two-Face too. And when you become more of a fan of the Adam West stuff, Batman Forever really fits into that Adam West, Burt Ward.
And I understand that, but just as a direct sequel to Batman Returns, like, how is it the same series?
Totally different.
Yeah,
totally
maybe
different.
a rebooted universe would have made sense,
Yeah.
But okay, last thing to end on this note. So what is it that draws us to comic books? We're all collectors at some level, or have been at some point. It bleeds into all these other areas, facets of our lives. Because even if we're not super into movies or cartoons, which I think most of us are, or whatever, we hear about these projects, we check them out just because they're in that same vein. What draws us to the genre of comic books and the medium specifically, even today?
I'll let you guys go first.
Good story.
I think
it's enjoyable.
Yeah, it's like, the stories you read like in a book, but it's adding art into that. It's taking those action figures that you played with as a kid and putting them on pages, and like, there's stories that, like, aside from, like, you create your own stories as a kid with your action figures, with your toys and stuff like that. But, once you pick up on these characters, these, iconic characters, these famed characters, you get to go back and see, like, why are they so special? And, the stories that they go through, I think for some stories definitely jump through the pages, and you gravitate towards it. They captivate you.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful the way you put that, and the way that you mentioned story at its center. I think we've told stories through images since the very beginning. Even before we put words to paper, we drew images on walls, and then we added words to accompany them. And no matter how that communicable process develops over time, new mediums like film, television, etc., we always go back to pictures and words. It's the first way we learn to tell a story and to read a story. And I think we're drawn to that. It's just built into our DNA.
I think the reason why I'm still drawn to it is I like the characters, right? I like the thought of an alien crash landing into Kansas and then being raised by Ma and Pa Kent to have strong American values and whatnot, truth, justice, and the American way.
Oh,
and then
not anymore. Apparently,
in my canon, truth, justice, and the American way. Superman is an American first and foremost. And
like
then
it's okay for that character to be it. Everyone doesn't have to be, and we do, and even you don't even have to agree. But like, let that character stay how he is. I'm sorry, this is a soapbox for me.
Well, he has so much power. He can still help other people all across the world. I have no problem with that. But first and foremost, he was born in this country, and you would think anybody that kind of grew up in Kansas, hey, you're American. That's it. And I like that. It's also it feeds, I think, to like a national consciousness character that it is American creation, even though his creators were Canadian.
Part of Americana, right?
That's right. It has been around since I was a kid.
It's like I think you need to have a diverse set of characters, right? But it's like it's okay if Captain America's like moral code is based on the time that he grew up in, because that's what he grew up with.
Right.
Superman grew up in Kansas. You might not agree with like everything. Maybe you're not like, oh, the American way or whatever. But it's okay for this guy to think that
100%,
and for us to think differently or the same, And I think that's beautiful. I think sometimes we lose that diversity in characters. But I'm sorry to cut you off.
You're not. Don't worry about it. So the characters is the main reason to collect, because you still like story, right? A nice story with a character that I've loved since I was a kid is fantastic, and especially when I have it in a floppy, and I'm not looking at a screen. And I'm not in the Snyderverse on the big screen there, and I get to see Superman, Batman, these kind of like crazy ideas of a guy dressing up like a bat, meeting other superheroes in a base, and then wanting to protect the world against evil villains, right? Like Lex Luthor. It's so fantastic, these ideas, but it kind of fits when you read enough comic books. Like I can believe that Green Lantern and the Flash can go back in time, because Green Lantern shoots his ray at the Flash, who's vibrating at a certain frequency, and they open up some sort of portal and then jump through it. Makes 100% sense in that world, right? Because I've been collecting comics for so long and following these stories. And just those characters, again, bring me back to when I was a kid and I was reading these comics right off the spinner rack, whether I got them at Albertsons or actually on the beach where I grew up. They had a newsstand and had two spinner racks on it. One was DC, one was Marvel, and then in each of the racks they had an independent row. So I would just, go there probably 3 times a week and just spin them, and then, pick whichever comic books I wanted. It takes me back to that time when I was looking at basically the offering of Marvel, the offering of DC, and seeing these characters. And that still brings me back and still makes me happy. And I'm glad that the hobby hasn't really taken more than what it's taken, right? There's hobbies that take you so far, right? Like if you're gonna do skydiving, that's like a whole thing. And I see guys fall down that rabbit hole, or with fishing, then you're gonna buy a boat, then you're gonna buy like 5 different rods, et cetera, et cetera. My issue is I got a closet full of comics.
That's right. You got worse problems you could have in your life.
Exactly. I can like, classic cars, and I need a garage for 20 cars. Comics is not so bad at the end of the day. And the characters are great. The stories are amazing. And it's nice to share it, especially with my sons, because they're in that age where they like that amazingness. They like, Batman and the Flash and whatnot. That's cool.
Yeah. Comic books, when done right, they're safe.
Yep.
They're simple. And they share the stories that we look for. And we keep searching that security in the arms of tight-covered, bulbous men and women, right? Who believe in something greater than ourselves. And as we continue to search for that safe and security, we're thankful to have you here with us today, Sock.
Can I plug Zap to the Future really quick?
Absolutely. Go right.
So if you're liking comic books and liking superheroes, check out the last episode of Zap to the Future. It has a special character created by myself and my, I think the email character was created maybe 10 years ago. and we kind of dusted him off, brought him into the Zap to the Future universe. It takes everything from Adam West Batman that I love, and my sons actually love it too, and then it kind of interjects them into a future adventure where he has, internet-based powers and stuff like that. It's adventures in the 31st century. It's super fun. I wrote the story with my sons, and again, the joy of the Adam West Batman show is in that episode, and it's just a bunch of fun.
Yeah, and I listened to the show myself. It's been a ton of fun seeing like the creative vision and hearing the like family come together. Yeah. If you have a daughter, son, niece, nephew, little cousin, make this their first podcast, okay? So that in a couple of years they're old enough to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
Okay? But check it out, listen, follow, subscribe, support, all that good stuff. We'll get that info up there. And till next time, keep searching.